Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to welcome you to ICMeSH 2021 conference. You are currently in the parallel session under the theme of Business and Economy for Sustainable Future. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Mustafa Malik, Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Studies and Assistant Professor in the College of Economics, Management and Information Systems at the University of Nizwa, Oman. I will be chairing this session. Over the last couple of decades, sustainability is no more seen simply relevant to natural and social environments, but it is increasingly being seen as critical to economic and business survival and success. Simply put, sustainability is in business is an approach to creating long-term value by taking into consideration how a given organization operates in the ecological, social, and economic environment, and is built on the assumption that developing such strategies foster company business longevity. In this technical session, we are joined today by researchers who will present their research on various topics, conceptualizing and strategizing business sustainability, thereby contributing and adding value to the existing knowledge on business sustainability. To start this session, I would like to share with you the corporate video of the University of Nizwa, Oman, the host institution for this session.
منذ الأزل أدرك إنسان هذه الأرض معطيات بيئته فتفاعل معها فعرفت بمجال أرض النحاس وأرض الصخور وأرض السفن ثم عمان إعلاء للحياة وعزائم صنعها. فمن بين جنبات الصخر يشق العماني أفلاجا تحيل جدباء الأرض حقولا غناء وقرى عامرة بالحياة، ومن نباتات أوديتها وجبالها الشماء أدوية ومرعى وغذاء، ولبانا يعبق عطره بين بني الإنسان في شتى أصقاع الدنيا. ومن البحر الناضح بساحتنا ينسج العماني بسفنه وشائج التواصل الإنساني البناء. بل حتى سكون الصحراء يضحى لديه ملهما لإبداعات الفكر، فإذا الخليل يصوغ موسيقى الشعر بحورا وحروف العربية في العين قاموسا. ابتكارات عمانية سباقة ترفض مسيرة الحضارة الإنسانية جمعاء. وحيث إن الإنسان هو هدف التنمية وصانعها في فكر باني عمان الحديثة، تأتي المباركة السامية بإنشاء جامعة نزوة كمؤسسة علمية أهلية ذات نفع عام إحياء لإرث علمي متجذر لطالما مد الأمة بأدباء وعلماء وقادة عظماء. فتولد جامعة نزوة برؤية سامقة متجددة، منارة علم ورشاد، ورسالة سامية تنشر الفكر الإيجابي وترسخ هوية الأمة وقيمها، فتغدو رافدا وطنيا فياضا من روافد بناء الإنسان بما توليه من قيم وبما تذكيه من فكر وقاد وبما تبنيه من معارف ومهارات تسمو بأصحابها، فتعلو بهم راية الوطن عالية خفاقة. هنا تتسع الخيارات والتخصصات، الرصينة في نظمها وتقديمها، المتناغمة مع تطلعات الوطن وإثراء الحياة وصنع النجاح. هنا يومض برق التأمل ويورق سيل الهمم في الريادة والإبداع. ويزهر فيض التجريب والاكتشاف. هنا يحلق الطالب في آفاق التطوع، ويغوص في محيطات الإبداع، ويسمو في فضاءات الوعي، ليصقل كل ذلك بالإسناد والعمل التطبيقي، فيصوغ المستقبل عبر برامج الإنماء الطلابي التي تغرس فيه معاني الإتقان وحسن الإنجاز. هنا جامعة نزوة، غراس طيب في بستان عمان المزهر، ولبنة من لبنات هذا الوطن تعلي مجده وتعزز نهضته ونماءه، مترجمة الفكر النير لحضرة صاحب الجلالة السلطان قابوس بن سعيد المعظم، الذي أرسى دعائم الدولة العصرية الحديثة لعمان على أسس العلم والعدل.
Thank you very much for patiently watching the video from our university, the University of Nizwa. Let's now continue with the session. Today in this session, we have 6 presentations. Each presentation will be for 10 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of question and answer. Question and answers will follow immediately after each recorded presentation. I would like to remind the presenters to be ready for the question answer session as soon as their recorded presentations are over. Also, I would like to remind the presenters that question answer is strictly limited to 5 minutes, so you are requested to follow strictly the time while answering the questions. To start with, let me bring to you the first presentation by Dr. Kashif Muhammad Shad from University Technology, Petronas, Malaysia. Dr. Kashif will be presenting the paper titled Conceptualizing Corporate Sustainability Reporting and Risk Management Towards Green Growth in the Malaysia Oil and Gas Industry.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to welcome you all for this presentation. My name is Muhammad Kashif Shad. I have recently completed my PhD in management from Management and Humanities Department, University Technology, Petronas. Today, I am here to present my paper in International Conference on Management, Social Sciences and Humanities. The title of my paper is Conceptualizing Corporate Sustainability Reporting and Risk Management Towards Green Growth in the Malaysian Oil and Gas Industry. These are the outline of my presentation. First of all, I will shed some light over the background, followed by introduction, literature review, theoretical and conceptual framework, and finally the conclusion of my paper. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development and Global Risk Report 2020 stated that over the last 10 years, the global risk has been transitioned from focus on economic risk towards more on sustainability-related risks, such as societal, geopolitical, and environmental risk, which has shifted the focus of organization from shareholders' value creation through invested capital efficiency, revenue and growth, tax minimization, cost of capital reduction, business performance improvement towards a new orientation of stakeholders' value creation like economic efficiency, environmental efficiency, and social efficiency. For that, the organizations, they are taking remedial actions to protect not only the economic pillar of the organization, but they are also trying to protect environmental and social pillars. Anderson, in 2006, he mentioned in his book that sustainability and risk management are the tools that can help organization to cope up with all these kinds of risks like economic, environmental, and social risk. So, in this study, we hypothesized that the implementation of enterprise risk management and corporate sustainability practices in the organization can help organizations to improve or stimulate towards the green growth. We believe that the combination of corporate sustainability and enterprise risk management can serve a more synergistic effect that will be greater than some of their individual effect. Past studies they stated that the ultimate objective of enterprise risk management and corporate sustainability practices in the organization is to improve the long-term viability of the firm. Based on all this, we come up with this paper, and in this paper, we conceptualized an ERM and corporate sustainability reporting model for its multiplying effect towards green growth in the Malaysian oil and gas industry. We choose oil and gas industry because they are one of the significant contributor in the global economy. If we talk about specifically about Malaysian economy, from 2008 to 2018, the oil and gas contributed around 52.4 billion or 27% to the government coffer. Besides the significance of oil and gas industry in the economy, they are considered as one of the riskiest industry in the global economy, because the sudden interruption in this kind of industry could lead to huge economic losses and potential hazards to humans and environment. For example, we can see the example of Gulf of Mexico that happened in April 2010. This was considered as one of the worst oil spill in the history of US. The government estimated around $397.7 million of oil was spilled, which affected 16,000 miles coastal line. 11 workers were deceased, which killed around 8,000 animals. In terms of fine, they paid around 2.3 billion only in 2017, and also the company's share price lost its 54% of value in New York Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange. So in this slide, I will talk about the green growth. What is green growth? First of all, we should know green growth is a global concern due to energy resources depletion, environmental degradation, and climate change. Hajar et al. 2020, he defined green growth as an environmentally sustainable economic growth, which is a low carbon, socially inclusive, climate compatible development centered around growing the economy while improving human well-being and social equity. In simple terms, we can say that it's a global value system that values human, society, and natural capital, in which the people uses ecosystem goods and services efficiently and sustainably. It also builds resilience in a changing world where countries, industries, and peoples are increasingly interconnected. So here the question arises that how or what we can do to foster green growth. For us, in this we say that to achieve the green growth and protect the society and environment, the governments and regulatory bodies usually articulate various tools and initiatives. In fact, enterprise risk management and corporate sustainability management practices, they can directly affect the operational excellence and the green growth of the organization. Corporate sustainability and enterprise risk management have been looked at in many perspectives, such as from actively engaging in CSR and ERM to achieve strategic business objectives, to corporate business performance, to corporate green growth, to improve corporate social and environmental performance, and overall organization performance. We believe that if the organization they invest their resources properly in enterprise risk management and sustainability management practices, they can achieve or they can generate positive green growth. By implementing enterprise risk management at all level of the organization, like subsidiary, business unit, division, or entity level, the organization can cope up with all their strategic, operational, reporting, and compliance risk, which can help them to improve their internal performance as well as their external performance. On the other side, sustainability management practices, the organization need to invest a lot of their resources in developing their environmental infrastructure, the science-based local land use and settlement policies, and plan promotion of cleaner production, stricter implementation of environmental laws, investment in the sanitation and mainstream green growth in government programs. If they do all the if they improve their enterprise risk management practices, sustainability practices, they can help them to achieve their economic, environmental, and social performance, which will help them to generate or stimulate green growth. This slide presents the theoretical and conceptual framework. The conceptual framework, we have three kinds of variable: sustainability reporting as an independent variable, enterprise risk management as a moderating variable, and green growth is our dependent variable. The causal relationship between independent, like corporate sustainability reporting, and dependent variable green growth is supported by stakeholder theory. Stakeholder theory is presented by Freeman in 1983, which believed that there should be equilibrium between internal and external stakeholders. If the organization if the organization satisfy the needs or demands or the objective of internal and external stakeholder, the organization can achieve their overall performance, they can improve their overall performance, which can directly help them to achieve the objective of green growth. The moderating variable is supported by modern portfolio theory. Modern portfolio theory basically is the theory of investor which emphasizes on risk and return trade-off. Modern portfolio theory claims that the firm's specific risk management practices are irrelevant to the shareholders' value. Yes, according to modern portfolio theory, shareholders are availed with two kinds of tools like diversification and asset allocation to manage their firm-specific risk. But it is on stark contrast against the phenomenal acceptance of enterprise risk management, which says that enterprise risk management is a holistic process or a holistic system that can help organization to cope up with their both systematic and unsystematic risk. If the organization implement risk management process properly and efficiently, they can not only cope up with their internal and external stakeholder, but it will also improve the overall performance of the organization. So, based on this, we believe that the sustainability practices with the moderation of enterprise risk management can help organization to achieve or to stimulate green growth. So this is a conclusion. In this paper, we have presented a conceptual framework that examines the intertwined relationship between risk management and corporate sustainability towards green growth. And we also gave the theoretical foundation for implementation of risk management and corporate sustainability towards not only managing non-technical risk, but also improve to not only cope up with non-technical and technical risks, but also its value implication in terms of green growth generation. We have proposed COSO ERM framework to measure ERM practices of the organization, and IECA framework to measure sustainability practices of the organization. Hopefully, future researchers they can validate this conceptual framework through empirical data and to achieve their objectives. Thank you from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation, Mr. Kashif Muhammad Saad. A very relevant topic in the current times when business sustainability is receiving an increased focus of research. Uh, I have a question from the audience. First question is from Mr. Amjad Shamim, and the question is: COVID-19 impact many organizations. How do you see the enterprise risk management framework can help companies to overcome the challenges imposed by COVID-19?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. It's very interesting question. Sir, basically, enterprise risk management helps organization to manage four kinds of risk. That is operational risk, systematic and unsystematic risk. COVID is like a pandemic, and it has affected the whole world. But enterprise risk management also focuses on technological practices. If the organization incorporate fully the technology and technology, hopefully they can manage such kind of risk. But the main focus of enterprise risk management is on operational risk, compliance risk, financial risk, and strategic risk.
Thank you very much for beautifully explaining the answer to that question. So this is the only question I have received from the audience for you, Dr. Kashif. Thank you very much again for
Thank
joining
you.
us
Thank
and
you very much.
presenting your
Thank you.
presentation very beautifully. Thank you very much. Let's go now to the second presentation. This presentation is by Ms. Hanana Khan, again from University of Technology, Petronas, Malaysia. Ms. Khan will present her paper titled A Granger Causal Analysis of Tax Spend Hypothesis, Evidences from Malaysia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hanana Khan, and today for this conference, the topic of my paper is a gradual causal analysis of tax spend hypothesis, evidence from Malaysia. So macroeconomic policies are usually used globally to stabilize the economy, and fiscal policy is one of them. So fiscal policy actually takes account the developmental and current budget to balance the national income and output. So there are three main components of fiscal policy: government spendings, government revenues, and deficit financing. So the government spendings includes the government investments, consumptions, and transfer payments. Whether the government revenues includes all those are finances received or collected by the government authorities. It can be from the taxes and non-tax sources in order to finance the government expenditures. And the deficit financing is actually the generation of funds to finance this deficit. The deficit is when the gap between the government spendings and government revenues is getting increased. So actually, this is the deficit. And to finance the deficit is the deficit financing. When we talk about Malaysia, in Malaysia, the government expenditures actually have steadily exceeds as compared with the government revenues. In the last 30 years, actually, when we are talking about the Asian financial crisis happened in 1997 to 1998, and the global financial crisis happened in 2007. So the economic growth of Malaysia decreased around 5% to 6% annually. Even till date, Malaysia is facing the side effects of those financial crises. So when we compare Malaysia with the other bordering countries and with the other neighboring countries like Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, so Malaysia is spending the relatively higher government expenditures, and that's why facing the more fiscal deficit per year. Just like in this graph, we can see that before 1997, Malaysia was facing the surplus in their fiscal balance, just like the red line are the revenues and the blue line is their expenditure. So they were facing the surplus. But after 1996, the expenditures are getting higher and higher and revenues are less than expenditure. So the gap between the blue line and red line, which is the expenditure and revenues, basically these are the fiscal deficit. And to finance the fiscal deficit is the deficit financing. So it is very important to investigate the relationship between the government expenditures and government revenues, whether the government expenditure is regulated by government revenues or whether the government revenue controlled by government expenditures. This is important because we want to know about that when the Malaysia policymakers can take decision about the fiscal policy, whether they collect their revenue and then they take decision regarding government expenditures, or first they spend their expenditures and in second step they take the decision about that how much we need to collect the revenue according to the level of their expenditures. So this is what we want to find out in this study, along with the implication to manage the budget deficit and also to investigate the long-run and short-run relationships between the fiscal components. So this is a literature review, and the most recent study on this topic was held in 2016 by Nazirullah, and we can see here in every period of time there are the difference in the findings. Some in 2006 in ASEAN 5 they have concluded that in Malaysia expenditure dominance hypothesis is confirmed. So similarly the others confirm the tax spending hypothesis, some confirm the bidirectional causality. In methodology, the phenomenal flow is actually to find out the causal relationship. It depends on the causal relationship, which can be unidirectional, bidirectional, or maybe there is no causality between the fiscal components. So this is what we want to find. And for this purpose, the annual time series is collected for Malaysia from the World Bank from 1990 to 2019. It's about 29 to 30 years, and 3 steps are included to find out the causality relationship. The first one, to find out the level of integration. The second, to find out the level of co-integration. And third, after the co-integration, we will going to explore the gradual causality direction between these components. So here, the vector error correction model, when we get about the unit root results and co-integration results, then we will have the vector error correction model. And here we can see that the government revenue as a dependent variable is regressive on the previous years of government revenue and the previous years of government expenditure. Similarly, on the previous years of GDP. Similarly, for government expenditures, and after finding the vector error correction model, we will go for the gradual causality model, where the government expenditure is regressive on the previous year of government expenditures and government revenues, and similarly for government revenues. So the results of unit root, in which we have used the augmented equipolar test to get the level of integration. So the government expenditures, government revenue, and GDP integrated at the first difference. Here we can see at level the three variables, government expenditures, government revenue, and GDP are not stationary, but when we take at the first level, so 3 of them are integrated at first difference. So after getting the level of integration, we move towards the Johansen co-integration test to identify the co-integrating vectors. So here we can see it's none. So the null hypothesis of this Johansen co-integration test is there is no co-integrating vector, but the probability value is 0.08, which is significant at 10%, and we reject the null hypothesis. The second null hypothesis is at most 1. So we also reject this null hypothesis at 0.003 p-value. So it means that there are more than 1 co-integrating vectors between government expenditures, government revenues, and GDP. So after finding the integration, the integrated level and the level of co-integration, and we have concluded that there is the long-run relationship exists between government expenditures, government revenue, and GDP. So here we can find out that the short-run relationships or the short-run dynamics between these variables by taking the GDP as an exogenous variable. So here, when the government expenditures, as in we take as a depending variable, so the government expenditure is basically the 11% of the error is corrected per year annually. And here we can see the change in government revenues is actually affecting the government expenditure significantly with a t-value of 2.58, which is significant at 5%. And the government revenues is significantly affecting the government expenditures when we take the government expenditure as a depending variable. And the GDP, gross domestic product, is significant in both equations. Here we can see the gradual causality test. Gradual causality test, so depending variable is the government expenditures and the government revenue is independent. So government revenue is causing the government expenditures significantly with the p-value 0.009, while the government expenditure is not causing the government revenue with a p-value of 0.50. So here we can take decision that in Malaysia is actually the tax spend hypothesis is satisfied, because in Malaysia, the policymakers first collect the revenues and from the tax and non-taxation sources, and after collecting the revenue, Malaysia take decision about the expenditure level. So these are the conclusion and recommendations. The study concludes that the government revenues support government expenditures in Malaysia, and this analysis reveals a one-way relationship between 2 fiscal variables, expenditures and revenues, from the revenues to expenditures. Like there is a unidirectional relationship, and the tax spend hypothesis is supported in Malaysia. So this analysis provides a suggestion for the policymakers of Malaysia that the Malaysia is not that economy where the tax implementation is decided based on the level of expenditures. In fact, Malaysia is an economy where the expenditures is decided on the base of the collected revenue. First, the Malaysia collect revenues, and after the collection, they decide about the expenditure level. So here, the policymakers are not supposed to recommend the high tax rate to reduce the budget deficit, because sometimes the high taxation can make the public more repressive towards the government spendings, because the public can lower their quantity demand and the substitution effect can be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hanana Khan, for your beautiful presentation. It was very interesting, especially in the context of investigating the relationship between the government spending and government revenues and its relationship with the fiscal policy. For sure, your recommendation will help the Malaysian government and elsewhere as well, the economic policy makers. It will help them really in defining and designing their economic policies. Thank you very much. And I have a question for you. It is from Dr. Kashif. The question is, how do you see the impact of fintech revolution in Asian banking sector? Do you think they are ready for the revolution?
Revolution, actually, just like I was talking about the counter-cycle policies. So yes, counter-cycle policies always play a very significant role in, in the revolution. And this is what our history tells us. Just like in previous crises, we already saw a revolution after 1996, how the economies were going down, especially in the Asian financial crisis in all over the world, even in 2007, and how the fiscal policy helped this, all the banking sectors and economy, and put the upward pressures in the, just we can say the boosting power they have put in the economic growth. So yes, but there are so many other factors in affecting this, just like I have recommended few policy recommendations. So basically it depends on the policy recommendations that how we can do the budget architectonics. It depends on the institutional architectonics, that how our institutions are managing the fiscal components.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ms. Hanana, for beautifully explaining the answer to the question. I hope the answer is actually very apt to the person who actually raised the question. Thank you very much for that. And now we proceed to our third presentation of the day. This is by Dr. Koh Yok Chin of University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia. The presentation is titled, How Firm Characteristics on Capital Structure Can Improve Technology Improvement in Manufacturing SMEs.
I'm Dr. Koh Yok Chin. I come from Utah. Today, I would like to present my conference paper, whereby the topic is how the firm characteristics on capital structure can improve the technology improvement in Malaysia manufacturing SME. You can see that the importance of the SME in Malaysia country economic developments in the past few years. In fact, they have faced the financial constraints is a reality. Unlike the large and the public traded firms, SME have a limited or not can improve the technology improvement in Malaysia manufacturing SME. You can see that the importance of the SME in Malaysia country economic developments in the past few years. In fact, they have faced the financial constraints is a reality. Unlike the large and the public traded firms, SME have a limited or no access to the certain types of the external financing, such as long-term debt or issuing the equity. It is generally the acknowledgement the SME inability to gain access to the bank loans to be because of the high collateral requirements, high interest rates, and lack of a relationship with the bankers. This one to show that the SME face increasing larger number of constraints and also have a less access to the former source of the external financing, and those accounting to the limited growth potential of the SME. Furthermore, SME has a limited resources to overcome the technology limitations and update themselves with the latest technologies. Undertaking the adequate technologies and monitoring ways the process challenges to the SME require a sufficient funds to invest in the productive new technology to operate efficiently and effectively. They need to invest in the machine and the latest technology to raise the operation level of firms. It seems that SME lack of the resources, both financially and skilled human resource, in order to adopt the technology. This critical issue causes the importance of the capital structure of technological improvement, especially SME. The study purpose is to examine the relationship between the firm characteristics and the choice of the firm's capital structure. Next, the study will investigate the effect of the internal and external financing on the technology improvement. In this study, there are the 5 independent variables, whereby firm size, profitability, the tangible assets, liquidity, and the firm growth. You can see that there are a lot of study did before with the positive and negative relationship towards the external and internal financing. So furthermore, this study will investigate the impact of a capital structure on the technology improvements. And most of the study ensure that it's a positive relationship between them. In this study, theoretical model is shown as here. Firm size, liquidity, profitability, tangible asset, and the firm growth are the independent variables. We affect the internal and external financing, and finally, we improve the technologies. Methodology. The data was collected from the structures questionnaire survey. Census the method is the best method to collect the data from SME listed in the SME corporation and is incorporating all the companies in the manufacturing sectors from FMM Directory 2018. Out of the 1,365 survey questions distributed, 235 sample responses were returned.
Thank you, Dr. Chin, for a beautiful presentation. Let's fourth presentation of this session. This presentation okay, I think there was some interruption in my connection here, so I'm sorry for that. Sorry. I hope now I'm being heard. Actually, I don't know what exactly is happening. This is some technical issue coming in. So, Dr. Chin, if you can hear me now, I have a question for you, which is coming from Dr. Kashif. The question is, how firm characteristics affect capital structure? Dr. Chin, I'm sorry for the technical interruption.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay. In my study, that firm characteristics for fields. Okay. In my study, I will look into the firm size, profitability, tangible asset, and the firm growth. So it means a different firm characteristics that will affect the internal or external financings of the company. So that's why example when it's a big firms, so definitely they need more internal or external financing. So that means different firm characteristics will be affect the different capital structures for the company.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for your answer. Thank you. Let's now proceed to the next presentation, which is by Dr. Ahmed Arifin from College University Islam Perlis, Malaysia, who will be presenting the paper titled Digital Marketing Perspectives in Cattle Business Supply Chain Integrated Approach.
I'm Dr. Ahmad Shabuddin Arifin, Senior Lecturer from College University Islam Perlis, will present on digital marketing perspective in cattle business, supply chain integrated approach. Currently in Malaysia, the number of people in animal farming is keep decreasing for several reasons. Firstly, speedy development causes movement of farm workers into the towns. Secondly, development also means that land available for cultivation and farming will be affected. And finally, livestock farming tends to become a sunset industry as compared to successful pig and poultry enterprises. Livestock is an important component of the agricultural sector in Malaysia and has significant contribution to gross domestic products. Statistics from Malaysia Veterinary Department show it contributed ringgit Malaysia 21,394.73 million in 2017 to ringgit Malaysia 23,784.33 million in 2018 for national agriculture and food production value. Poultry and pig industries are the most developed and important sectors and the biggest percentage of the total livestock output. The ruminant sectors are struggling to increase their production. Most significantly are the persistent decrease in their population. Farming system in Malaysia is generally a smallholder type, which is characterized by a low input and output. Big production will be promoted in the integrated supply chain system with the role of integrators and efficient contract farming. The potential of the system has been shown in poultry sector, and the approach is convincing as Malaysia has massive participation of contract growers. Malaysia also embarked on an importation program of several cattle breeds and finding the suitable breeds that can adapt to the environment. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the dairy breeds imported were Holstein Friesian, Australian Milking Zebu, Brown Swiss, Ayrshire, Jersey, and Shorthorn. Among problems and issues are producers face several challenges on a daily basis within a dynamic, ever-changing environment, which encounters increasing risks to such a degree that in order to farm sustainably, a competitive advantage in the form of lower cost and higher quality produce must be established. Primary production is relatively concentrated, implying the growers are price takers on the input and output sides. Barriers include high capital requirements, relevant experience and track records, the significance of research and biotechnology in the provision of seeds, and economies of scale in other major inputs. Such barriers to entry make it difficult for new and smaller entrants to compete with the existing market players. In the meantime, by adapted technology in this chain will make operation run smoothly. For example, a procurement agriculture producer can be selected through the internet because the ability of the data to supply the information needed. The consensus of economists is that the growth in livestock production was desirous by increased demand, which was driven by increasing populations and raising per capita incomes. Contract farming, contract farming has been studied since 1970s, with initial empirical research being mostly descriptive in nature. For example, studies in Africa have focused on historical and political context of contract farming, conflicts between growers and the contracting firms, and the imbalance of power between the two parties, among others. The changes in food and agricultural market have influenced the need for high level of managed cost the nation in agriculture commodity value chains. The study adopted a digital marketing and food supply chain approach, studying on livestock supply chain by gathered information and analysis from previous literature. Conventionally, the supply chain includes the downstream flow of materials with the upstream flow of information. The food supply chain is considered to be a system of stages which represent a particular sequence of economic activities through which resources and materials flow downstream for the production of goods and the provision of services for ultimate consumption by consumer and the feedback of information. Based on the literature review, several variables play a very important role and should be considered in this study. The company feels there is a need to continue the scientific study of the cattle business on the concept of integrated supply chain. Besides, need to adapt this technology development in Industrial Revolution 4.0 coupled with in interactive digital marketing, peer-to-peer network, data science, Internet of Things, changing the industry scenario in many points of view through disturbing of business model. The supply chain can be described as the connecting process across supplier-user relationship, starting from the raw materials and ending with the consumption of the finished products in the livestock sector. The company's integration with suppliers refers to the entity working closely with suppliers and viewing the end as an important component of supply chain. In the study, incorporates the degree of involvement and influence suppliers have in the company's decision. The level of strategic partnership with suppliers may be used to refer to closer long-term relationship with suppliers. In general, this article tends to highlight the positive sides of supplier involvement in livestock business. Under this integrated farming system, both enterprises, for example, oil palm and cattle, will together provide higher total returns to each hectare of land resource use. Previous studies show a very convincing result. The cost-benefit analysis approach was employed to evaluate the financial cost and return from integrated cattle rearing under oil palm. Various measures of project were employed, namely net present value, which is NPV, internal rate of return, IRR, and benefit cost ratio, or BC ratio, using data source from 3 case studies. For conclusion, Kumpulan Ladang Perbadanan Kedah or KLPK Sdn Bhd will venture on this type of farming system and prepare for justifiable of type production system should be done through understanding the interactions between components, major components in the system, by the growing livestock products and the identity conserved supply chains offer producers to opportunity to add more value to their product. This may widen the choice set facing producers if a number of competing supply chains offering more convincing in future business. The agriculture producers must be ready with the changing business model from the traditional to modern, which blended with technology, in this case adapted digital marketing in supply chain management process is a priority. Changes to digital marketing or inputs supply relationship, however, will require new skills in contract evaluation and negotiation. Producers will need to be more proactive in digital marketing activities. It is hoped that, considering all the variables highlighted above, KLPK Sdn Bhd intends to continue with scientific research in collaboration with the university as part of research effort to determine direction and future. That's all from me. Thanks for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Arifin. A very interesting presentation. You took us to a different sector, indeed, and it was really very interesting listening to you about the agri and livestock business side of the industry. And we have a couple of questions for you, and there are pouring in many. I will choose only two questions for you.
Okay.
First thing is that what are the challenges of digital marketing amidst COVID-19 pandemic, especially when we talk about the cattle or what we call it agribusinesses, cattle businesses, or when we talk about the livestock businesses? What are the challenges especially faced in the digital marketing during COVID-19?
Okay. Can you hear me?
This question is from Kashif Muhammad Shad.
Okay. Can you hear me? My voice?
Yes, we can hear you well. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you very much. So right now, actually, in the livestock industry in Malaysia, we don't have any one-stop center, digital hub, which is the main constraint is to provide during COVID-19. This is the platform to boost the market by facilitate the all infra equipments and software and hardware on the digital type, which is blended, which is IoT and the artificial intelligence, then the blockchain as well. So these are the things, the main focus for this study. The challenges in Malaysia now, we don't have any type or model for this kind of digital marketing, for example. These are the challenges. And during COVID-19, uh, uh, this is the way to solve the all challenges.
Good.
Yeah,
Good. Thank
yeah.
you very much. And I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
This is, in fact, these are coming from two different people. I will combine them together. This is the question which I combine is from Hasbullah Ashari and also Assistant Professor Dr. Hasbullah. Oh, sorry, it's only one person. And this is a question which is, in contract farming, in fact, the costs of the digital implementation on the farmer side will be borne by the integrator. And can small farmers afford the cost of the digital implementation?
Okay, good. This is a good question, actually. For example, in livestock industry in Malaysia, the only contract farming system, the best contract farming system in poultry sector, but we have none in beef, dairy, and so on. So the type of contract farming, the all equipment will be facilitated by integrators. But in beef and dairy, we don't have any integrators at the moment. So once the hub for integrators provide everything on this equipment on digital, a small farmers can associate with them. So this is like colony system. The main integrator will absorb the small producers. So small producers have a chance to participate in this business. Right now, they don't have any channel to market their product. For example, Malaysia from Johor to Perlis, we have distance so far. But by the implement on this in digital marketing, just key in the numbers of the cattle ready to be marketed, and then the will be goes smoothly by implement digital marketing and absorbed by main integrators for this program. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you very much, Dr. Arifin, for beautifully actually explaining the question and the answer to the question. Thank you very much. Now we move to the next presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, and hope answer the two questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Arifin. Thank you. So now we are moving to the next presentation. It is the second last presentation of this technical session today. And the presentation is by Associate Professor David Ching Yat from University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia. Dr. David will be presenting his paper titled An Evaluation of Corporate Governance Characteristics and Corporate Performance between government-linked companies in Malaysia and Singapore. It's based on a panel data analysis.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Ng. I'm here to present our findings on the topic and evaluation of corporate governance characteristics and corporate performance between government-linked companies in Malaysia and Singapore, a panel data analysis. My co-authors are Lau Teck Choi, T-Pek Ling, and Lai Su Fong. To begin with, I would like to explain corporate governance. Corporate governance is defined as a set of customs, policies, rules, process and procedures that help an organization to monitor and direct management activities. Good practice of corporate governance became especially important after the global financial crisis in 1997. It can act as a guideline for organizations to manage their corporations in order to prevent market failure. We move on to the Code of Corporate Governance in Malaysia. It was first initiated in 2000, followed by a revision in 2007. A further revision was made in 2012, further enhanced in 2017. As far as Singapore is concerned, it was first initiated in 2001, revised in 2005. A further revision was in 2012, and it was revised again to be known as 2018 Code. The aim was to promote high levels of corporate governance in Singapore by putting forth principles of good corporate governance. Our problem statement is twofold. Most of the previous studies focus on corporate governance impact on firm performance among PLCs and but not GLCs. There was also lack of research studies that investigated comparing corporate governance of Malaysia and Singapore. The significance of this study was to extend contribution to agency theory, stakeholder theory, stewardship theory, and resource dependency theory. Now to research objectives. Our primary research objective is to determine if corporate governance contributes towards GLC performance in Malaysia and Singapore. With the primary objective, we have developed 6 secondary objectives. Moving on, research questions. Our primary research question is, does the implementation of corporate governance best practices improve corporate performance among government-linked PLCs in Malaysia and Singapore? With the primary question, we have developed 6 secondary questions. Chapter 2. We apply the agency theory, the stakeholders theory, the stewardship theory, and the resource dependency theory. From these theories, we use the dependent variables, which are the return on assets, the return on equity, and Tobin Q. So you can see we have 3 dependent theories. For as far as independent theories are concerned, we have director ownership, average number of board meetings per year, board size, independent directors, number of women directors, leverage level. From the dependent and independent variables, we have developed the hypothesis. We have 6 hypotheses, A, B, C, for each one of them. They are director ownership, average number of board meetings per year, board size, independent directors, number of women directors, and leverage level. Our conceptual framework acts as a foundation to conduct this study. Chapter 3, Research Methodology. Our research design is a quantitative data analysis. It focuses on cross-sectional and longitudinal analysis. Panel data will act as our main analysis technique. We are using secondary data which will be extracted from Bloomberg, Bursa Malaysia, and Singapore Exchange Limited. The top 20 market capitalization of Malaysian GLCs and the top 20 Singapore GLCs are used. 120 firm size observations in Malaysia and Singapore. As far as data analysis is concerned, we have applied descriptive analysis, inferential analysis, panel data analysis, which is our main tool. But under panel data analysis, we have to determine whether we are going to utilize fixed effect model or random effect model. In order to determine fixed or random effect, we have to use the Houseman test. In Chapter 4, Data Analysis, For Tobin Q, Malaysia, we apply the fixed effect model. For Tobin Q, Singapore, we also apply the fixed effect model as its p-value is 0.00, which is below the benchmark of 0.05. For ROA Malaysia, we also apply the fixed effect model as its p-value is 0.0053, which is less than benchmark of 0.05. ROA Singapore, similarly, we apply the fixed effect model, p-value of 0.00626 is less than the benchmark. For ROE Malaysia, we also apply the fixed effect model as its p-value is 0.015, which is less than the benchmark of 0.05. However, for Singapore ROE, we apply the random effect model as its p-value is 0.07, which is higher than the benchmark of 0.05. Chapter 5, Discussion and Conclusion. As you can see, our hypothesis testing summary for Tobin Q and ROA as well as ROE. This is the summary. Director ownership, only ROA in Malaysia is significant. ROE, only Malaysia is significant. None of the dependent variables are significant for average number of board meetings. For board size, only ROE in Singapore is significant. For number of women directors, for Tobin Q, ROA and ROE, all of them are significant. For leverage level, for Tobin Q, Malaysia, Singapore is significant. For ROA, only Malaysia is significant. For ROE, only Malaysia and Singapore is significant. This is a summary of hypothesis testing. You notice that for hypothesis 1, director ownership, we reject. And this is concurred by Matno and Nguyen. For hypothesis number 2, average number of board meetings a year, we reject all of them. And this is concurred by Harvey and Joel. For hypothesis number 3, board size, we also reject. And this is concurred by Nazar, Chancharat, Kalsi, and Joel. For hypothesis number 4, we also reject independent directors, and this is concurred by Fauzi and Lok. For hypothesis number 5, number of women directors, we also reject, and this is concurred by Ahern, Parato, and Fasio. For hypothesis number 6, leverage level, in Malaysia, we accept. For Singapore, only Tobin Q and ROE is accept. This is concurred by Nima, Ismat, and Khan. In summary, this is our summary to understand the influence of board characteristics towards firm performance in Malaysia and Singapore. So for director ownership under panel data, there is a positive and significant effect on ROA. There's a negative and significant effect on ROE. For average number of board meetings, there is no impact. For board size, only in Singapore, there is a positive and significant effect on ROE. For independent directors, there is no impact. For number of women directors, there is an impact, but unfortunately, there is a negative impact. For leverage level, for both Malaysia and Singapore, there is a negative impact. In conclusion, I would have to say that corporate governance has less impact towards government-linked PLC's performance in Malaysia and Singapore. I thank you for listening to me. Be safe always. I now want to proceed to a question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor David Ching Yat. A very good presentation, in fact. And when it comes to comparing the two neighboring countries and bringing about on the best practices they actually adapt to, and sharing those best practices with the researchers here on this platform. Thank you very much for that, Dr. David. And now I think this presentation has got many questions. I will take them one by one. And the first question I would actually bring to you is by Dr. Amjad Shamim. Dr. Amjad Shamim wants to know that the question is, this is interesting paper and has generated good result for government-linked companies, GLCs. How the findings of this study can be applied by SMEs for increasing their financial performance?
For SMEs, did you say?
Yes, SMEs, small and medium enterprises.
Well, I can't answer the question because I'm not doing an investigation on SMEs. Perhaps maybe in the later stages, I will be able to do SMEs. You know? But the problem with SMEs are there are very few SMEs that are publicly listed. So I decided not to do SMEs because of that reason. I need the information, the financial information, in order to run the tests.
That is okay, fine. Thank you, Dr. David. Another question, which is very relevant to your presentation today, is from Ms. Hanana Khan. She says that Malaysian government has introduced MCCG, Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. Is this successful to solve basic issues in corporate finance?
Well, to answer this question, my conclusion would be the Malaysian public listed companies it is not compulsory for them to follow. It is not compulsory for them. It is only recommended that the Malaysian public listed companies follow. So unfortunately, we are getting mixed results.
Okay, thank you very much, Associate Professor David. We will now move to the next presentation, which is the last but not the least. The presentation, which is we are going to have this time, is one of the very interesting presentations, which will be very relevant to the current pandemic and situation we are in. And this presentation is going to be presented by Ms. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name properly, Ms. Kia Fan of International University of Malaysia, Malaya, Wales, Malaysia. Who will present her paper titled Work-Related Mobile Instant Messaging Used After Work Hours During COVID-19 Pandemic. I think this is really very relevant and relevant to all of us. This is what is happening these days. Work-Related Mobile Instant Messaging Used After Work Hours During COVID-19 Pandemic. This is the presentation by Ms. Kia Fan.
Good day, everyone. My name is Jasmine Pan. I'm glad to be here today to present my research paper with the title of Work-Related Mobile Instant Messaging Used After Work Hour During COVID-19 Pandemic. The presentation covers a few key topics, including a brief introduction, literature review, research model, finding and discussion, implication, limitation and future research. Finally, I will end with a short conclusion. The COVID-19 pandemic has a far-reaching impact on workplace practice, with millions of employees worldwide have to alter work pattern. Digital work is no longer an option for business continuity. In a study to investigate the key smartphone-based activity during the COVID-19 pandemic, the usage of mobile instant messaging increased by 64%. It serves an ideal resources as its flexibility permit various work practice. However, the work-related use of mobile instant messaging has extended beyond the contractual hour during pandemic, pushing the work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour to a new limit. The constant connectivity has made work-life balance a far-reaching dream. The extended working hour, generally without additional remuneration, impact negatively on the employee job satisfaction and job performance. The survey by Deloitte revealed that 46% of the employees expect a drop in job performance due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the gradual easing of lockdown measures, work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour will likely continue as herd immunity is yet to achieve. This perfectly captures the urgency to understand the underlying mechanism on how work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour can be beneficial to employees during the pandemic, which is underrepresented. As such, the study aimed to examine the underlying mechanism which relate the graduation obtained from work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour to job performance through the sequential mediators of work-life balance and job satisfaction. It is hoped that the finding will produce crucial insight on how to implement the practice concerning healthy yet sustainable mobile instant messaging use after the paid work hour during the pandemic or for future pandemic-related crises. Previous studies with similar contexts were mainly dominated by email, smartphone, with a limited representation of mobile instant messaging as research context. However, different technology embedded with different functionality, which could produce significantly different work outcome. This introduced challenge in comparing the research finding. Though lacking mobile instant messaging specific study, its consequences remain a controversy due to its flexibility paradox. As expected, consequences has been predominantly negative. There is far less research on the potential benefits. Therefore, there is a need to identify the condition under which work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour is beneficial. However, this involves a complex mechanism that is harder to disentangle given the current predominantly habitual use of mobile instant messaging. Furthermore, study with similar context has treated the role of technology deterministically, which propose that the technological features can produce the desired social outcome. However, past review has suggested that the media use is rational personal choice that is driven by individual motive and gratification. As such, for the present study, there are 5 gratification concerning work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour during pandemic, including social interaction gratification, information sharing gratification, mobile convenient gratification, professional advancements gratification, and self-presentation gratification based on the uses and gratification theory. The theory is a useful foundation to examine why employees are gratified towards work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour. It's postulated that users are rational and actively seek gratification from media use. This gratification serves as value job resources to employees during the pandemic. Based on the job demands and resources theory, job resources has motivational impact and are generally used to predict the beneficial employee outcome. Therefore, it is anticipated that these resources act in juggling various competing demands from both work and non-work domain, and thus achieve better work-life balance. This greater work-life balance in turn predict greater job satisfaction and ultimately resulted in this employee taking reasoned action by putting extra effort to enhance their job performance. The finding revealed that employees who obtain information sharing gratification, mobile convenient gratification, and self-presentation gratification enjoy better work-life balance, in turn developed greater job satisfaction and ultimately contributed more effort for better job performance. This finding confirmed the belief of users and gratification theory and job demands and resources theory, in addition to some previous empirical evidence. Unexpectedly, work-life balance and job satisfaction failed to sequentially transmit the effect of social interaction gratification and professional advancement gratification on job performance. This could be attributed that the proposed relationship was not linear. Indeed, a reasonable level of work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour can be viewed as job resources, but up to a specific limit. Beyond that, it may rather act as a job demand. Besides, the proposed relationship might be contingent on other variables, such as individual preference. Since most respondents are Generation Y with constant attempt to seek new opportunity in career advancement, they might be reluctant to review their ambitious goal among co-workers. Nevertheless, this non-significant relationship might require further study to identify their exact causes. Though statistical significant conclusions were not made for all the proposed relationship, nevertheless, this result forward various implications. Theoretically, The finding confirmed that the complexity involved in unveiling the mechanism under which work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour was beneficial during the pandemic. The study highlighted that the critical role of job resources is the trigger for motivational path, supporting the exaltation of job demands and resources theory, and the humanistic view of usage and gratification theory, in which employees are rational in selecting mobile instant messaging to obtain different gratification for beneficial performance outcome. Practically, employers should first one, increase the job resources by emphasizing the use of mobile instant messaging for specific use and providing necessary training. Second, foster work-life balance by empowering employees to decide the extent to practice work-related mobile and instant messaging after work hour based on individual needs and preference. And the last one, nurture job satisfaction to enhance job performance. Furthermore, supervisors should lead by example. This is crucial during the pandemic as employees are physically isolated from other co-workers and might closely monitor their supervisor's action. Several limitations were acknowledged. First is the study adopted a cross-sectional design. Future research can be replicated by using longitudinal field survey or experimental research design to investigate the mediating effect that unfold through time. Second, the data used was single source self-reported. Future research can be designed as multi-level by gathering performance data from multiple sources, either objective or subjective measure. The third limitation is related to the heterogeneity issue among the sample population. Future research may use multi-group analysis to identify heterogeneity issue and compare the result based on the observable factor, such as employee-specific characteristic and organizational factor to enhance the possibility of developing organizational policy that meet the need of each category during the pandemic. As a conclusion, work-related mobile instant messaging use after work hour during pandemic should be viewed as a practice for enhancing job performance. However, there are multiple levels as to why employees practice work-related mobile instant messaging after work hour during pandemic, which at the present stage of the research could not be easily investigated. Both researchers and practitioners should work jointly to gain better insight on how to proactively manage the tech-driven transformation process during pandemic. The goal should be that of facilitating those employees equipped with mobile instant messaging to enhance their job performance without compromising the work-life balance and job satisfaction. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fan, for an interesting presentation. I think, as I said in the beginning of the presentation as well, that this one is the one which actually relates to all of us, and we could connect to ourselves to this presentation, to this topic actually very, personally. There are a lot of questions pouring in for this for your topic on the topic you presented, but I will just try to actually concise them into a couple of questions I can combine together, so not to actually extend that to many questions. So one thing is that there are comments which says that the presentation of research is taken the one side of the coin, that is the employer side, which is actually how the job performance can be more effective by using the mobile applications and with messaging and other things. What about the other side of the coin, which is the employees? What about their health? What about their work-life balance? Is it your research somehow dealt into that area as well? You can hear me, Ms. Fan? Can you hear us, Ms. Fan, if she's there? Can the host please let me know whether our presenter is personally there to answer our questions? Okay, I think the presenter will be added to the room now. So let's wait. So, dear audience, due to some technical glitch in the system, we are not able to connect the presenter to answer your questions. We are actually trying our best to connect to you as soon as this system allows us. Please bear with us. Please be patient. We are trying to get the presenter on board to answer all of your questions. Please bear with us. Please have patience.
هذه الأرض فريدة من نوعها، تقاسيمها تشكلت بمقادير عجيبة، رسمت بدقة معالم هذه الأرض. هنا في عمان تجتمع الجبال الشامخة والسهول الخضراء والشواطئ الغنية في وئام بيئي رائع، فانتشرت الأشجار على أرضها وترعرعت الحيوانات في برها، ونمت الشعاب المرجانية في بحرها، وتكاثرت الكائنات الحية الدقيقة في مختلف مواطنها، لتشكل بذلك تنوعاً أحيائياً فريداً من نوعه. الإنسان العماني صديق هذه الأرض منذ زمن طويل، تجود له بعطائها ويبادلها الاهتمام ليحفظ خيراتها باستدامة، ويستخلص منها فوائد لا حصر لها، فهي مصدر للغذاء والدواء، ومكون أساسي في منتجات الجمال، فلكل سائل منها مسألته، ولكل طالب مراده. ولأجل غاياته استخدم بذكاء وحكمة أدوات البحث لديه مع تطورها عبر العصور، فهو يدرك جيدا أن العلم هو سبيلنا الوحيد لمعرفة ماذا ستكشف لنا الطبيعة من حولنا عن أسرار. جامعة نزوة، الجامعة الفتية التي تسعى لأن تكون إحدى الجامعات الرائدة في مجالات البحث العلمي. آمنت بقوة البحث العلمي فلم تأل جهداً في تحويل موارد الطبيعة العمانية إلى نواتج ذات قيمة مضافة. من هنا جاء قرار إنشاء مركز أبحاث العلوم الطبيعية والطبية، والذي يهدف إلى تعزيز الكفاءات الوطنية الأكاديمية والبحثية، وخلق بيئة بحثية مبدعة في مجالات علوم الكيمياء والأحياء والعلوم الطبية، ليكون رافداً علمياً لمستقبل أفضل. يضم مركز الأبحاث 12 مختبراً مجهزة بأحدث التقنيات والأجهزة والأدوات البحثية، ويشتمل المركز على مرافق الدعم الفني ممثلا في مبنى الحيوانات الصغيرة والمعشبة النباتية وبنك الجينات ومعرض للموارد الطبيعية. الإنسان هو جوهر الحكاية، كل الحكاية، فهو أساس كل مشروع علمي، مسلح بالعلوم والمعارف، مستفيد من أدوات البحث في رحلة الكشف عن ما تخبئه الطبيعة العمانية من كنوز. إضافة إلى فريق البحث الرسمي، يفخر المركز باستقبال عدد من طلاب الدكتوراه سنوياً عبر برامج التبادل الأكاديمي والإشراف المشترك.
لقد حقق المركز مجموعة من الإنجازات البارزة في أبحاث الجينوم وأبحاث كيمياء النباتات الطبية وأبحاث تقنية النانو الطبية، كانت محل إشادة من المجتمع الدولي. هذا النتاج البحثي هو ثمرة البنية التحتية الصلبة من المختبرات المجهزة بأحدث التقنيات، وكذلك الدعم اللامحدود من الجامعة ومن الشركاء الآخرين. سنعمل بمشيئة الله على تطوير نوعية الأبحاث وتدريب وتأهيل الكادر البحثي العماني.
الشراكة هي أن تمضي مع من يساندك من أجل تحقيق غاية مشتركة أسمى، شراكة نحقق بها تعاونا وتكاملا مع مجموعات البحث الأخرى، ونبني بها جسور تعاون نشطة محليا وإقليميا ودوليا. نتشرف هنا بدعوة العلماء الرواد من مختلف أقطار العالم بإقامة مؤتمرات وندوات وورش تخصصية تعرض فيها نتائج أبحاثهم ولتبادل خبراتهم. وفي إطار إنتاج ونشر المعرفة نفخر بما تحقق من إنجازات، أبرزها نشر أكثر من 700 بحث علمي محكم بمعامل تأثير تجاوز 1500 وبواقع أكثر من 11500 استشهاد، بالإضافة إلى إصدار مجموعة من الكتب وفصول الكتب. كجزء من مسؤوليتنا المجتمعية وواجبنا الوطني، نحرص على أن يصبح المجتمع واعياً بنتائج البحوث التي تعزز الاستخدام المستدام للموارد الطبيعية، فنقوم بتقديم محاضرات وحلقات عمل عامة لنشر نتائج أبحاثنا، ونقدم للطلاب فرصاً تدريبية تسقل مهاراتهم وترتقي بهم علمياً. ولأننا نؤمن بالعائد المستقبلي، فإن المركز هو القوة العلمية التي ترفض الصناعة عبر استشارتنا وتطوير المنتجات لعديد الشركات. وضمن برنامج علماء المستقبل ينظم المركز للجيل الشغوف بالمعرفة من طلاب المدارس استضافات في أروقة مختبراته البحثية. مستقبل سريع التغيرات، والبحث العلمي هو أداتنا لفك شفرة المعارف والكشف عن أسراره الدفينة. بالعلم نتخطى حدود ما هو ممكن وما هو مستحيل، فهو خطواتنا العملاقة لنكتشف به فرصاً اقتصادية أبعد مما نعتقد. ولتبقى جامعة نزوة رائدة في البحث العلمي، ولتبقى دائماً منارة علم ورشاد. مركز أبحاث العلوم الطبيعية والطبية، جامعة نزوة.
Thank you, Ms. Fan, for being with us. And we apologize, the audience, for having the technical glitch in getting back Ms. Fan on the platform. So we are now back. There are a lot of questions for you coming pouring in, but I will just try to combine them in a short, to combine them together to make you very easy to answer them. And because this is a topic which relates to all of us, and we relate personally to this topic, and it's very interesting, actually, topic. And the question is that the research you have conducted is, we believe that it's on the one side of the coin, like, for example, that how the employer side. I think was it intentional, or you missed the other side of the coin, which is the employee side, the stress, the depression, the workload, and no time, no time foundations of work during the pandemic. Was that considered into your research, and was there any findings you found? How about the employees' stress and depression?
For the present research, right, I do not consider the negative side. Like just like at the introduction part, I did mention that, right? Okay, now the digital work is no longer an option. We cannot run away during this pandemic. So since we can't run away, might as well we find a way how to make full beneficial use of this. So that's why the depression, the negative side is not considered. However, right, it's good to consider this negative side effect in long term, because it seems like this pandemic is not going to go away that easily. So we may include this one in the future research.
Yeah. As far we see that during the pandemic, we have seen, as I mentioned before as well, that we see there is no time limit for our work. It pours in from any corner at any time. And we have a question from Dr. Siti Mariam. She says that how do you define the work hours during the pandemic? Is there any definition? Is there anything we should define, or is there we should define actually the work hours, and
Okay.
how do you define them?
Okay, basically for this research, right? Okay, the respondent is only include full-time employee. Why we include the full-time employee? Because they have the formal work arrangement. Means that the time when they're employed by their employer, there is a formal arrangement like 8 to 4, 9 to 5. So they have a formal work arrangement. So we assume that this is the work hour that we actually agree between the employee and the employer. Yeah.
Okay, since your presentation has taken the positive side of it, because there are questions which are on the apprehensions on the negative side of it. So I will not put all those questions one by one to you, because actually your research didn't actually cover that aspect. But to me, from my side, and to actually bring all these comments together, I would suggest that what is your recommendation to the organizations? Although we say that with the full-time employees, we are on contract with the organizations. And okay, this is a pandemic situation, a temporary situation where we are expected to work beyond our limited work hours. But what is your recommendation to organization? How should organizations look into this aspect, which is very crucial and very important? Because at the end of the time, if the employees work with stress, depression, anxiety, and all those things, and at the end of the time, the performance, we cannot see the performance happening, even if because what does matter is the quality rather than the number of hours or the time the people work, rather than we see it should be the outcome based, which is actually the something which has come from the audience as well. So what is your actually recommendation through your research that organizations should take care of, and making the employees comfortable even if they do work beyond the limited work hours? What is your recommendation to organization? How should they take care of their employees? What are the things they should actually bring in to take care of their employees during this pandemic?
In this case, right, there are basically three suggestions. Okay, the first one is that, right, they basically can continue using the mobile instant messaging, but limited to certain usage. Like for example, based on the hypothesis finding, right, okay, we limited to those like information sharing, okay, for mobile convenience purpose and also for self-presentation. So this is the way that we actually increase in terms of, this one is actually serve as the resources to the employee. And then also, right, we actually, we should promote the work-life balance, okay, because work-life balance basically is a solution in this case, okay. So allow some flexibility for employee to decide to what extent they actually want to practice this, the work-related mobile instant messaging after the work hour. And then the last one, right, is actually because job satisfaction is actually important in this case, okay. The employer can actually maybe by, how to say that, record down or by actually monitoring the time the employees spend on the work-related mobile instant messaging, okay, and then by using this one, serve as a reward or a form of recognition or additional compensation to the employee.
Yeah, I don't want to bother you for many questions because I'm concluding the remarks made by the presenters to actually summarize them into specific questions for you to actually focused ones. We had this before pandemic as well. We are in a different situation now. But what we will see is that flexi hours, employee would work for the flexi hours as well. Companies have, organizations have those, HR policies as well to allow their employees to use flexi hours. Like they can choose the working hours they have, or they can share the work with others as teams. So in this situation, in pandemic situation, do you see that flexi hours is somehow relevant to this? And this could be possibly, even if the companies and organizations want to work like 24/7, but they can induce use the flexi hours so that there's still a time limit for the people to work rather than go 24 hours a day.
Okay.
Is that could be a solution, like a flexi hours to help the employees to identify their own working hours?
It could be it could be it could be a way to implement it.
Yeah, correct. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fan. This was a really interesting presentation and much relevant and apt presentation in the present situation. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all, and dear audience. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, and those who raised the questions. Thank you very much for bringing on those questions to make this session very much interactive. So we are actually in the concluding part of this technical session now. As a chair of the session, please allow me to summarize this session and conclude this session. Today we had 6 presentations in this session, starting with Dr. Kashif, who presented a conceptual framework for corporate sustainability reporting and risk management towards green growth in the Malaysian oil and gas industry. The work he presented is novel, especially in the context of oil and gas industry. Once supported with an empirical study, his work would really add value to the existing literature in the area. This is my observation. Ms. Hanana Khan, she was the second presenter, and she presented a paper that investigated the causal relationship between government spendings, government revenues, and the fiscal policy. And she used the Granger causal analysis of tax spending hypothesis. Her findings are really, good, and these are expected to be very helpful to the economic policy makers, especially in the context of Malaysia. We had another presentation by Dr. Hua Yok Chin. Through her paper, she highlighted how firm characteristics, especially in the context of SMEs, that determine their capital structure influence on their technology improvements. This topic is very current and very apt, especially in the current pandemic situation when SMEs have been struggling to sustain themselves. Surely investing into technology improvements is very important. That is what we learned during this pandemic. And her presentation was really very apt into the modern and into the current times. Dr. Ahmed Arfin took us to a very different but very interesting side of the business operations, yes, and deliberated on how supply chain integration can be achieved with through digital marketing perspectives in cattle business, supply chain, integrated approach. A very interesting topic indeed, because it was outside really an interesting topic which covered the sector which many of the unless it is not covered by a science conferences. In the business and conferences, not many times we see the papers and research coming into this area, but this was really very interesting topic he covered, and particularly the supply chain logistics and supply chain integration approach used into the adapting the digital marketing perspectives in cattle business. A very interesting presentation, in fact. Dr. David's work on evaluation of corporate governance characteristics and corporate performance between government-linked companies was yet again an interesting presentation. Especially, he compared the two neighboring countries, Malaysia and Singapore. And one thing very good was about that to identify the best practices among the two countries and highlight those best practices so the countries can actually gain, from those best practices. Finally, we have Ms. Kia Fan's paper on work-related mobile instant messaging used after work hours during COVID-19 pandemic. As we can see from the comments and the questions coming out on this presentation, we could see that most of us, and I would say all of us, actually relate ourselves to this topic. Although there is a suggestion for this research that the second underside, which is the negative side of this work environment during the pandemic, the other side of this could be a future direction into this research, which is observation of all the audience here and all the presenter those who raised the questions. In fact, very interesting presentation, but it would have been really very great if the other side of the coin could also be somehow brought into a picture and have a balance between the employer side, and the employee side, and this would have been a very in fact, very good presentation, and this really touched all of us. Thank you very much all. This is the summary of the whole session today. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this technical session, as you see. Thank you all for your presentations, dear presenters, I can say. To all the audience who joined this session today, thank you very much for raising very relevant questions. I hope we have been able to answer your questions well. And I really hope that the presentations and the research, the findings which were actually presented today through this technical session would really help us all in actually improving our research portfolio. We can, and maybe we get a lot of new directions of future research through this platform. And also this platform has provided us a lot of opportunities for networking as well. I hope through the WhatsApp group, we actually communicate with each other, new friends and new, and hopefully I really see in the future we can combine, join together for this is what actually the conferences are meant for. And the connections, it actually helps us to, establish connections with other researchers from other countries. And I wish all this will be very beneficial and very beneficial for you and for us all here. Thank you again. Please join us again tomorrow in the other technical session. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Ma salama.